Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we're back on the dev server for update 1.87 and it's time to have a look at the Nürnberg. The Nürnberg is the German new light cruiser. It's kind of similar to the Kern that we already have. The main difference seems to be the secondary armaments that this machine gets. So let's rattle through them. First of all, it has 3 sets of 150mm triple mounts, and then it has 4 dual mounts of 88mm, 2 40mm Bofors Flak 28s, 4 dual sets of 37mm, 7 sets of 20mm, 6 dual mounts of 20mm, and 2 quad mounts of 20mm. This thing is armed to the teeth when it comes to secondary armaments, and to me, it exemplifies what we're going to see going forward. Something that a lot of people don't really talk about when it comes to the larger ships that will eventually come to the game, namely, well, we don't know if they're going to come, but it's looking like it, right? So stuff like heavy cruisers, stuff like, eventually stuff like battleships, frigates, things like that. What you end up getting on them is a ton of excess guns. A lot of people normally focus on the main weaponry, but on a ship like the Nürnberg and on a lot of other ships, I think it is correct to focus as well on the secondaries. I don't understand how an aircraft gets anywhere near this ship. I've already seen where the majority of aircraft don't get near ships which have half of the AA that this does, whereas against this ship, I have no idea how anything gets close to it. Whether it be a smaller boat, whether it be a plane, the only way is if the commander is asleep at the wheel, I suppose. So when it comes to secondaries, they look really powerful, especially when dealing with what they're supposed to, smaller ships and planes. Looking at the armor profile of the Nürnberg, what we end up seeing is it has a 50mm belt on it, which should be good against the majority of HE, stopping it coming in to the boat. On top of this, above it, there is 25mm, which seems to be modeled behind it as well. So my guess is you have the 50 plus the 25, making about 75 around, plus you have the 25 here. Then some 15mm on the 88s, some extra stuff on some of the other guns, and then the other piece of armor which seems important is this 100mm here, which actually circles the bridge itself. On top of this, you do have 20mm around some of the other areas, and the guns themselves 20mm with 60mm for the ammunition. Overall, it's a lot of armor, but it's spread out, and in the areas where it matters, such as the central area, for me, the armor isn't strong enough. I generally would like to see more than 50mm. I understand that it's kind of 75 with the strip behind it, but that's still not good enough. I would like it to be higher than that. I would like it to be higher in many key areas, especially over here near where the guns are sat. So the first set of guns, or the first set of guns find themselves in the front here with massive ammunition storages with no armor really around them at all. And then the back 2 guns is kind of the same. You have 35mm of armor, but that's about it. Nothing crazy here. And the main armor is in the center, pretty much covering the engines and the main smoke funnel that you see here. On top of this, also the transmissions. So I've talked about this with the Kern in the past, where with the Kern, it normally feels like you cannot really pen. Well, not pen, that's the wrong word, but you cannot do a lot of damage to the central area of it because the engines are coated with fuel. Now, the Nürnberg is a little bit different. The fuel is not as high, so what will happen is you will be able to arc shots into the engines and take them out, and instead you will be able to do a lot more damage than you will to the Kern. There's also a little bit of some smaller engines here with a smoke funnel, where you have the big Kahutas right here in the center. You have what seems to be, 10 engines overall? Yeah, that seems to be it, and then of course, as it says, 3 transmissions on top of that. It's definitely a big boat. One of the things that makes it stand out over the other light cruisers that have just been added is the crew count. So this has 935 crew, The Brooklyn has 868, the Kirov has 692, and the British Leander has 767. So out of the new ones, the Nürnberg has the most crew, and because of that, it should be the one which takes the longest to take out if you are trying to knock it out by knocking out its crew. I think it would be much easier to try and sink this thing, or just try and take out it by making it set on fire and all of its components disappearing incredibly quickly. Another thing is the ammunition choices that you get on this machine. So you start off with some HE on the 150, then it goes to some APC-BC and some HE on the 150 as well. So kind of the same deal as many others. The HE is great against destroyers, but if you're hitting light cruisers, I generally switch to AP just to do a little bit more penetration damage. Then you've got the HE from the 88, and you can have a distance fuse put on it as well. They both pen the same. So it's pretty much, do you want a distance fuse or not? Because everything else is exactly the same from the shell. It also has some torpedoes, which I don't think I talked about. It has 6 of them, 3 on each side. With these light cruisers, there is definitely less emphasis on the torpedoes, which for me is kind of sad. Because I really like torpedoes. I think they are the future of the, I think, for me at least, I think they are the future and a lot more fun. Let's just change HE shell here, just to give it a go. One thing that I was impressed with on the Kern when it first came out, and also something I'm impressed on with this, is the guns. The 150mm do a lot of damage. They are able to dish out a ton of stuff. Look at the AA fire going up there. Isn't that scary? Plus the 88s, by the way. Like, oh my god. Can you imagine anything getting close to this? I really can't. But yeah, oops, why are we looking over there? The 150 guns really, in my opinion, set themselves apart from the competition because of their muzzle velocity and also because of the raw damage that they were able to do. You can still see the raw damage of these 130s is crazy, and the reload is still very good. These are great guns, and it's much easier to annihilate a destroyer with them than anything else. Even the 180s, you know, from the Soviet light cruiser. For me, I would much more prefer having these 150s over the 180s because, first of all, they reload quicker. The velocity is generally better as well, even though it's quite high on the 180s. But for me, I just like the fact that these rounds just do a lot. And they have a good AP component if you want to use them like that. But instead, you can just use them to, you know, smash the ship which is sat over there. And as a light cruiser, there is definitely a conversation going now of which is the best one. With the Germans, it was very obvious from an early state that the Emden and the Kern were two of the best destroyers in the game, by far. And when you had a bunch of light cruisers added, light cruisers I should say, but light cruisers added, the discussions just kept going on and on and on until everybody just turned around and said, yes, the German ones are better again. So for me, the question at least is up now, does it go to a separate nation? Does the crown for the highest or best light cruiser go to a separate one? And I think it will now. Even though this machine is great, even though it dishes out a ton of damage, even though I really like its main guns, I think they're wonderful to see, I do think that the debate is not going to be between this anymore. I think it's going to be between the Soviet ship and then the American ship, where this is just going to be not really a second, but it's going to be seen as a distant third, even though it definitely isn't. This is still a very powerful vehicle, and always will be, even if it doesn't have the true firepower of the Soviets, and doesn't have the true rapid fire of the Americans, and doesn't have the true armor of the British, it still is good. It still is a good mix of pretty much everything, alongside whatever else we see. And I think a lot of people are kind of worried that the Germans are going to lose their pedestal at the top of the naval stuff when it comes to light cruisers, and it might be right, but that still doesn't mean you don't have a better secondary and a better tertiary. Think about it in that way. If you can finish that Brooklyn, if you can do a ton of damage to it with your Nürnberg, and then you bring out the Kern, you're going to finish it very quickly, and then dominate the battle against those Omaha classes. So, overall, I am happy to see another very similar German light cruiser to one that we already have, because the one that we already have is incredibly fun to play, and to see another one be also incredibly fun to play is kind of a godsend in a way. I also, after looking into it, don't really know exactly what you can give the Germans beyond this point when it comes to other machines. So that will be interesting to look forward to in future updates. Anyway, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time.